RD sir, please start.
Okay. I welcome you all for this most awaited immunization dialogue. And we are really happy that every episode wise, the interest is going on. And this is really keeping us, our academic pulse also throbbing. Otherwise, clinically, we are doing very well, but academically, many times our pulse is not that throbbing or it becomes weak. So this immunization dialogue in vaccinology and immunology is keeping us going and with good throbbing pulse. And friends, in addition to our backbones of this vaccinology and immunology, the immunization dialogue, Dr. Sanjay Lalwani, Dr. Sanjay Marathe, and Dr. Khadke, every time we are having, for every episode, we are having a guest speaker and guest panelist. So we have got a guest speaker today, and she's a young, dynamic academician, Dr. Manish Kulkarni from Aurangabad. She has got interest in vaccinology and immunology, and also she has got added interest in rheumatology. Before taking your more time, I will not go into details of this, but she's young, dynamic, and she has taken a very good topic, that the newer vaccines and vaccines in pipeline. So we are all ears to hear her. Also, we, as a routine, after this lecture, we always have a panel discussion, and which, even if the scheduled time is only 1 hour, but many times it goes to nearly 75 minutes, 80 minutes, and 90 minutes, and we feel that we do not feel the time which is going overboard, because so many questions and discussions are going on. And today we have got a guest panelist, guest faculty, Dr. Ashwath Narayana. He is HOD and head of department of this. He is professor of community medicine from KIMS, Bangalore, Kempegowda Institute of Medical Sciences. Sir is an authority in rabies. He is WHO Expert Advisory Panel on Rabies from 2023 to 2027. He has been immediate past president for Association of Prevention and Control of Rabies in India, which is also called as APCRI. And he has got so many projects, and he is being member on project coordinator, core member, project, so many WHO expert consultation meeting at different countries. So we have got a very eminent and authority on rabies, and we have got this panel discussion on rabies vaccine. We have kept this 1 hour for rabies vaccine. So with this introduction, Neha, you want to say something, or otherwise I will like to hand over baton to Dr. Sanjay Lalwani and Dr. Manish Kulkarni. Do you want to say anything, Amol and Neha? Do you want to add anything?
Nothing, sir. Nothing, sir. Please proceed, sir.
So I hand it over to Dr. Manish Kulkarni to give her talk on newer vaccines and vaccines in pipeline. Over to you, Manish. Unmute yourself.
So we also want to share that, viewers, please note today's program has been allotted 1 MMC point, and requesting everyone to please type your name, city name, central IP and MMC registration number in the chat box. And today's our MMC observer is Dr. Sachin Gaikwad. Now over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Gaikwad or Dr. Suhas Patil?
Sir, Dr. Sachin Gaikwad, he is a general practitioner in Nashik.
Okay.
Welcome, Sachin Gaikwad, sir. Manish ma'am, please.
Yes, sir, we can proceed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for such high praises. Can I start sharing my slide?
Please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you, Maha-IP, for giving me this opportunity. And today's topic is vaccines in pipeline. Before we proceed, here is a disclaimer. My job is to talk, your job is to listen. If you finish first, please let me know. So why more? Our vaccination card is already full. We have got so many vaccines. I get difficulty in calling the parent every now and then to schedule the vaccine. So is there really any need for new vaccine? So answer to this is a definite yes. This is because of the shortcomings of the currently available vaccines. We all know that no vaccine is 100% safe, no vaccine is 100% effective. We need to give multiple doses, so multiple injections, they are costly, you require cold chain. And therefore, yes, we are in search of an ideal vaccine who can overcome all these shortcomings. There are many of the diseases for which currently we don't have any vaccine. We don't have a vaccine for group B streptococci, we don't have for E. coli, for Shigella, for HIV, and many more diseases. The geriatric population is on the rise, and so there are problems. So we have got Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. We have got cancer, which is the new epidemic. Then we have many lifestyle diseases like hypertension, diabetes, and obesity, addiction. So yes, we'll be very happy to have vaccines against all these conditions. Let's briefly summarize how a vaccine passes through various stages of development. So discovery of the antigen itself takes many years. Then it enters into the preclinical or laboratory or animal testing. And when it is successful, it enters the human trials. These human trials are phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, depending on the increasing number of volunteers to find out the safety, the dosage, the efficacy, long-term actions. Then there's a review by FDA, and there's additional post-marketing testing. So you can see that the compound success rate of any vaccine which is coming to the market is very, very low. And that's why we don't get so many vaccines very often as we get the drugs. So initially it was thought that anything which you can isolate, inactivate, and inoculate will act as a vaccine. But then it was found that it was not all that simple. There was difficulty in isolating the organism, difficulty in inactivating it, difficulty in producing in a large scale. And therefore different approaches were tried. And you can broadly categorize these approaches into 3 main approaches. One, where you're using the whole virus. Second, you're using a part of it. And the third one is the genetic materials. So based on these are the various vaccine platforms which are available. We all know. There are classical ones. There's whole inactivated, live attenuated, protein subunit, virus-like particles. And these are the next generation one, the viral vector, RNA, DNA, and the latest is antigen-presenting cells vaccine. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of each and everything because it is beyond the scope of the time which is allotted to me. But let's briefly recap few of the terminologies to make the further lectures simpler. So first one is a conjugation. We all know what is a conjugation. So conjugation is combination of a polysaccharide antigen with a carrier protein by chemical activation. So with this, you make the weaker polysaccharide antigen stronger, recognized by the T cells. So you can give this vaccine to the younger vulnerable population. So this is conjugation. So what is chimerization? This terminology also we have heard very often. So chimera is mixing up of parts of different animals. So in Greek mythology, the word chimera means it's a fire-breathing female monster with a head of a lion, the body of a goat, and tail of a serpent. So if you take these animals individually, if you see the goat, it's the weakest animal. But when combined with a lion and the serpent, I think it's very powerful. So similar way, the weaker antigens, they're combined with a structurally similar but different organisms, stronger genes, and you get a chimera. So these are produced by substituting the genes from the target pathogen to the similar genes of a closely related but different organism. So with this way, you can get a good immune response to the weaker antigens, and this is the chimera. So the sole purpose of this slide, which is included, is just to wake you up so that we can proceed further. This is chimera. So the next terminology, which is quite often used, is the recombinant vaccine. Now, recombinant vaccine is the one with which you can the DNA, the viruses, which are difficult to isolate or grow in the laboratory. You take out the gene which encodes the antigen, like in this example, the hepatitis B surface antigen, you incorporate it into the bacterial plasmid, so you get a recombinant DNA. You introduce it to the yeast cell, put it in the fermentation tank where the yeast cell multiplies, and with it, it produces the surface antigen. So with which you extract, you purify, and you get the hepatitis B surface, hepatitis B vaccine. So this method was very cheap method and easily scalable. You can produce the vaccine on a very large scale for the viruses which are difficult to grow in the laboratory. So this is the recombinant vaccine technology. Now we all know that unless we isolate the organism in the laboratory, it is very difficult to find out the vaccine antigens for the vaccines. But there was a concept called the reverse vaccinology, which was proposed by Rapoli in early 1990s. And this was utilized for meningococcal group B vaccines. And in this, with the help of the computer, the genomic information of the organism was found out, and from which you select the antigens for the vaccine. So here you didn't have to culture the organisms in the laboratory. So this was the advantage, and this is the reverse vaccinology. Now that with more and more precise antigens were responsible for finding out the development of the subunit vaccine, the peptide, the DNA-based vaccines, all these vaccines were very specific, but again, they were less immunogenic than the conventional first-generation vaccines. So in order to make them more immunogenic, the adjuvants were added. Now, the adjuvants were the aluminum salts, which were used for the most of the conventional vaccines, but these were not very useful for all these peptide, subunit, and DNA vaccines. And again, they had the inherent property of more reactogenicity. And therefore, to overcome this problem, newer adjuvants were searched for. So this is MF59, AS01, AS03. These are all the newer adjuvants we used. And again, these DNA vaccines, to be precisely delivered to the immune cells, different delivery methods were tried. And these are the liposomes, virosomes, polymers, live bacteria, peptides, and biopolymers, and all this. Another hindrance to giving the vaccine was the fear of injection. So, and also the latest DNA vaccines, they could not be given by the conventional needle and prick injections. So the alternative painless ways of administering the vaccine was searched for, and these are the food-grade bacteria, mucosal vaccine, aerosol vaccine, transepidermal vaccine delivery. Among these, we have the gene gun, the ultrasound, the powder immunization, microneedle, hydrogen patch. So this is a gene gun and microneedle patch, which is used to give the DNA vaccine. Edible vaccine. This is by far the most interesting concepts in the vaccine delivery, which was entertained. And here the genetically engineered subunit vaccines are used, and here the plants are used. Like we used the yeast cells for the recombinant DNA vaccine. They're used not only for the antigen production, but also for the administration. So what was done that the gene antigen was incorporated into the plant nucleus or chloroplast. And here the plants acted as the biofactories, and they produced the vaccine, subunit vaccine. And the plants which are used were the transgenic plants like potato, tomato, banana, even rice and maize were tried. So the obvious advantages will be this lowest cost for production and delivery. This is an inexpensive way of vaccination, unless of course, if you're using tomatoes nowadays, which are very costly. There's easily scalable production, convenience of delivery, no need of cold chain, no expertise required, and it produces both local as well as systemic immune response. And the obvious disadvantages are inconsistent dosage, intolerance, allergy, worker exposure, unintended exposure into the food chain, and environmental risk. So in the developing countries like India, if this becomes possible, I think it will be really beneficial because it will be cheap, the acceptance will be good, and there won't be any expertise is required to give the vaccine. But if something like this becomes a reality, I think as far as the vaccines are concerned, we will have another competitor after the government sector. So I hope this doesn't happen as long as I practice. Now, jokes apart, there are many vaccines which are currently in the pipeline, and I have just handpicked a few of our interest. And dengue vaccine, it tops the list. We all know that there is definitely a need for dengue vaccine. It's a global problem. It's endemic in almost 110 countries. Even in India, even in our region, we see the surge in the dengue cases just recently during the monsoon season. It has got very high mortality and morbidity, no specific treatment. So yes, we need a vaccine for dengue. So do we have one? Yes, we have got Dengvaxia. This is the first vaccine to be licensed. It's CYD-TDV. What does it stand for? It's a chimera between the yellow fever and dengue virus. And TDV is tetravalent dengue virus. So all the 4 dengue viruses are used. It's produced by Sanofi. It's a live attenuated chimeric vaccine produced by recombinant DNA technology. This is the first vaccine to be licensed in Mexico in December 2015, and it's used in the individuals between 9 to 16 years residing in very high endemic areas. So the dose is subcutaneously 0.5 is given in 3 doses, 0, 6, and 12, and it's given to the children between 9 to 16 years of age. So obvious contraindication is a live vaccine, so immunocompromised, any allergy, pregnancy, or breastfeeding. Now, why this vaccine was given only to the previously exposed? Initially, when the vaccine was introduced, there were vaccine trials which pointed out that if the vaccine was given to very young children between 2 to 5 years old, and if they were bitten by a dengue-carrying mosquito within 3 years, they had severe dengue and hospitalization. And this study was published in 2015 in New England Journal of Medicine. So why was this? We all know that the first infection with the dengue is most of the time it's mild, and it's the second infection which causes the problem. And this is because mostly of the antibody enhancement disease, and mainly these are the non-neutralizing antibodies. So what happens is if you give the vaccine to the child who has never been exposed, to the very young child, the vaccine itself acts as the first exposure. And when he is bitten by a mosquito carrying dengue, the first natural infection acts as the second exposure, and therefore enhancements of disease and there's severe dengue. So we tried the other way. We gave the vaccine to those who are already exposed. So the exposure is the first exposure is a natural infection, and the second infection is obviously the vaccine, the second exposure. And so this risk was mitigated. So WHO revised the recommendation of dengue vaccine in April 2016, and it recommended that it should be used only in children who have got the dengue confirmed infection in the past. Lab confirmation of the dengue infection in the past is required, and the specific laboratories were set up for that. And if such a confirmation was not possible in the areas, it should have a seroconversion rate of more than 80%, and the child above 9 years, you can safely give the vaccine. So this was best for those who are already exposed, living in the endemic areas. It was not best for the short-term travelers for obvious reasons. It was 70% effective in those with the pre-exposure, 90 to 95% effective against severe hospitalization. It was a well-tolerated vaccine. So this is dengue vaccine with setbacks, like it could not be given to children less than 9 years of age, where the mortality and morbidity was very high, and you require specific laboratories to confirm that the child is previously exposed. So we wanted something better than this. So the search continued, and then there was this Takeda, a Japanese company, who came out with their vaccine, Takeda 003 vaccine, called as Q-Dengue. So this is a tetravalent live vaccine, but it's a dengue chimera. So instead of using the yellow fever as a backbone, attenuated dengue 2 virus was used as a backbone, and the remaining 1, 3, and 4 were chimeras. So there were less number of foreign antigens in the vaccine component, so the less chances of non-neutralizing antibodies, and therefore the risk of antibody enhancement disease was found to be very less. So this has only recently been approved to be used in Indonesia for the age group of 6 to 45 years. So the age group has been brought down from 9 years to 6 years. So this was the first advantage. And you didn't require the prior lab testing. So regardless of previous dengue exposure, this vaccine could be given. And we cut down from the 3 doses of dengue vaccine to 2 doses. So these are the additional benefits of this Q-Dengue. This is Q-Dengue. So there are other vaccines in the phase 3 and 2. There is Tetravax BV, and it has been taken in India for further development by Panacea Biotic and Serum Institute of India. There are phase 1 vaccines also, and among these, there is Serum Institute of India is currently recruiting volunteers for its phase 1 trials in Australia for its candidate vaccine dengue. For us, there is no vaccine in Indian market as yet. Coming to next is malaria vaccine. Now we all know malaria is a life-threatening disease, particularly Plasmodium falciparum. It's preventable and curable. It has got almost more than 6 lakh deaths even in year 2020, and the most of the disease burden is in WHO African region, and 80% of the deaths due to malaria are in under 5 age group. The vaccine was in development since 1960s, but there were certain drawbacks because the malaria is a large parasite. There are thousands of antigens. It has got a complex life cycle. So in the most of the times, it remains hidden from the immune system. And also it was a disease of the developing world, so there were no takers for the vaccine. But the substantial progress was made in the last decade, and October 6, 2021 marks the historic date in the development of malarial vaccine. The WHO recommended a widespread use of the vaccine RTS-SA01 for the children living in sub-Saharan Africa or where there is a moderate to high falciparum malaria transmission. So which is this vaccine? So this is Muscurex. It's produced by GSK and it's based on circumsporozoid protein. It's the first and the only vaccine which is currently available against Plasmodium falciparum. It's a recombinant chimeric vaccine. It's produced in the yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And where is the chimera? It's between the R terminal portion of Plasmodium falciparum, combining it with the surface antigen of hepatitis B. Now, the dosage which is given, you give 3 doses, 4 weeks apart, plus 1 booster, 12 to 18 months after the 3rd dose. It's given for children more than 5 months old in endemic areas. So it gave 40% protection. That's the initial trials. It has got a very strong safety profile up to date. More than 2.3 million doses of this vaccine have been administered in 3 African countries. It's a highly cost effective and it had been found to be additional beneficial effects. Also, it reduced the anemia by almost 60%. It reduced the need for blood transfusions by 29%, and the malaria-related hospitalization rates were reduced to more than 60%. So though this is an imperfect weapon, if used along with the other malaria control programs, it was found to be really very beneficial when used in a mass scale. So this is Muscurex. These are the other vaccines in making. There are more than 30 vaccines in the various stages of clinical trials. The next disease is tuberculosis. We all know tuberculosis is a global threat. It's one of the top 10 causes of deaths worldwide. Almost 1.2 million children are affected with tuberculosis even in 2021. There is a saying which goes, if you can diagnose the tuberculosis, you find it easy, then you have to rethink about the diagnosis. And if you find it difficult, then you are not alone. So it's the overdiagnosed and overtreated disease, at least in our part of the world. It's a leading killer in HIV positive. And because of the overtreatment and overdiagnosis, there's a cases of drug-resistant tuberculosis, which is on the rise. So why do we need better vaccine? Isn't BCG, which we are currently using, sufficient? Now, BCG currently is the only vaccine which is available. We have been using it since 1920, so it's more than 100 years we have been using it. And we all know that the BCG is effective against severe tuberculosis, and it's not effective against primary TB or latent infection, and it has got a variable efficacy. Now, we all know the reasons for variable efficacy because of the genetic variation of the BCG strains which are used. It's a T-cell vaccine, so genetic variation in the population, there's interference with the non-tuberculous mycobacteria, interference with the concomitant parasitic infection. Then why do we continue using it? Because we don't have any option. But then this RBCG, this is a recombinant BCG, candidate VPM1002. It's produced by Serum Institute of India. There's a genetic modification of the BCG strain. So what is done is the insertion of the listeriolysin gene in place of urease C gene. So because of this, what happens is the urease C gene is required for maintaining the integrity of the phagosome. So it keeps the mycobacteria intracellularly and it makes this vaccine a T-cell dependent. But when you replace it with listeriolysin, the listeriolysin, it changes the pH of the phagosome and it releases the mycobacteria inside the cytosol, and where the apoptosis is also promoted and various antigens are released. So the antigenic load is more and various efferent immune mechanisms come into action. And so you get a very robust immune response. So this vaccine is a lyophilized vaccine and the water for injection is a diluent. It comes in a 10 ml dose vial, same as the BCG. And the dose is also same as 0.1 ml intradermally. Now, it is being assessed as a replacement, BCG replacement in newborns, in adolescent adults at BCG booster, and as a therapeutic vaccine. Now, these are the various clinical trials which are going on for recombinant BCG so far, and we expect that the recombinant BCG will be available in recent future as a booster dose in adults. There's another vaccine that is M72A01 by GSK, which contains a recombinant fusion protein derived from 2 mycobacterial strains. And it's currently in phase 2B trials in Kenya, South Africa, and Zambia. And it found to be 54% protection for the pulmonary tuberculosis. And other vaccines which are tried are MIP vaccine, which is exclusive leprosy vaccine, Mycobacterium indicus pranae, And this is developed by Cadila and ICMR. So it is India-made vaccine, and currently phase 3 trials are going on to find out the safety and efficacy of this vaccine in close, healthy contacts of sputum-positive TB patients. And then there's a Mycobacterium vaccae, which is licensed to be used in China as a therapeutic vaccine. But as of now, BCG. Coming to next is the zoster vaccine. So we all know zoster is called as shingles also. It typically occurs in adults and elderly. And it's because of the reactivation of the varicella virus, which remains dormant in the nerve roots and as the immunity wanes off. Now, why we need a zoster vaccine? It has been stated that the world's population is aging, and it is stated that 1 in every 6 persons worldwide will be more than 65 years old by the year 2050. And 1/3 of the adults will develop herpes zoster in their lifetime, and half of those who reach 85 years will be affected with herpes zoster. So in the absence of vaccine, it is said that almost 278 million cases of herpes zoster will occur globally over the next decade. And herpes zoster is rarely fatal, but what we are worried about is the complication. And mainly it's a post-herpetic neuralgia, which is an excruciating neuritic pain which occurs once the rash disappears. It's very debilitating. And it occurs in 10 to 18% of the persons who get the herpes zoster. And as the age advances, the chances that you will get the post-herpetic neuralgia are more. So we want to prevent this complication. So you can say the zoster vaccines are therapeutic vaccines because already the infection has set up. Now, we had initially Zostavax, which is no longer available in many of the countries. It was a live attenuated vaccine produced by Merck using OCA strain. And it was given to immunocompetent adults more than 60 years of old as a single dose, but it was withdrawn due to some safety concerns. Now, what we have is Shingrix. This is produced by GSK. It's a recombinant zoster vaccine. It's given in 2 doses, separated by 2 to 6 months in immunocompetent adults aged more than 50 years and older. And being it's a recombinant vaccine, you can give it to the immunocompromised adults more than 18 years who will remain immunocompromised because of their drugs or diseases. It gives a long-lasting protection. It's relatively safe, but it's currently very costly. It's available at our place. So we all know it will be a cost-effective in older adults, but in the countries like India, low and middle-income countries, we have got many other public health priorities. So unless we get a safe, effective, and inexpensive zoster vaccine, our need will continue. This is Shingrix by GSK. This is respiratory syncytial virus. We all know it's a causative agent for the common cold, and it's a highly contagious seasonal virus. It has been said that almost 90% of the young children will acquire this infection before their second birthday. And bronchiolitis in young children can be really fatal and is a common cause of elatia and hospitalization in infancy and toddlers. And now it has been found that many of the adults and elderly, particularly those with the comorbidities, also have this respiratory syncytial virus infection. The vaccine development started very early, since 1960s, but there were certain setbacks to this RSV vaccine because it was a disease of very young infants. The peak of the severe disease was around 3 months of age. So this was the age where you can't possibly give the vaccine to protect because the immune system is immature, and also there is interference with the maternal antibodies. There were 2 antigenically different serotypes, A and B, that were causing the disease. And the first experience with this vaccine was not good. There was the first vaccine which was formalin inactivated. And in this case, there was antibody enhancement disease occurred, and almost 2 cases were fatal, and therefore it was withdrawn. So this was a setback. But now, just recently, in May 2023, US FDA has approved 2 vaccines to be used for adult vaccinations who are more than 60 years old. This is Arexvy by GSK and Abrysvo by Pfizer. And there are other vaccines which are in the clinical trials to protect the young infants. Sanofi is in the early phases. And because it was a young infant's disease, the vaccination during pregnancy to protect these young infants is also being tried, and studies are going on for this. There are many other vaccines of interest. We would like to have a vaccine against HIV. The need is obvious, but there's not much progress in this field. This is because HIV mutates very fast and very fast than the flu virus as well as the COVID-19. So what we require is to stimulate the B cells that can produce the broadly neutralizing antibodies. And it attacks the CD4 cell itself. So the immune response is obviously compromised, and obviously there are safety concerns while conducting the trials. So there was not much progress was made in this field. There are more than 35 vaccines in the early phases of development, but only 2 had reached the phase 3. And this largest trial, which was carried out in Thailand, it used 2 different vaccines by prime and boost technology, and it showed efficacy of just 31%. It didn't affect the CD4 count. There was no effect on the viral load also. But now with the success of COVID-19 vaccine, this mRNA platform has shown some light in the tunnel, and now the vaccines using mRNA platform are being investigated. Cancer, we would like to have vaccines against cancer. There are more than 200 cancer vaccines in trials, but there's only one who has received the FDA approval for clinical use, and this is TPUSL-T for prostatic cancer. It's developed from the autologous dendritic cells of the patients, and it has shown to have a survival benefit in men with the advanced prostatic cancer. And recently, there's a breast cancer vaccine candidate using alpha-lactalbumin, which is a retired hormone which is secreted by the cancer cell. And this is the first vaccine to enter the human trials showing promising results. Now, this list is endless, and I can't possibly continue. I have already taken the extra time, and I'm very thankful for the organizers for giving me this extra time. This was just a news article recently published in a paper where the moderator kicked out the panelist for overshooting his time. This must have happened for the first time in the medical history, and I'm very thankful and grateful that this is a digital platform and this history won't be repeated. Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you, Dr. Manish. It was in a very short time. Wonderful overview.
I hope I finished it within half an
You
hour.
are absolutely in time. You are not short, you're on time. And it was a wonderful overview of all the newer vaccines in pipeline, which are more relevant. And what is this Pranay stands for? It is for the Indian scientist for Indicus Pranay vaccine.
It's a Mycobacterium indicus pranae. It's a rapidly growing non-pathogenic mycobacteria. And it's a heat-killed vaccine which is used in leprosy. In fact, we should be proud that this is produced by Cadila and ICMR. This is an India-made vaccine. And currently it has been tried in 5 districts in Bihar and Gujarat. And it is given to the close contacts of the leprosy patients. And after 3 years, they have found that almost 60% the case load is reduced. And now they're trying it for the tuberculosis contacts, and it's in the phase 3, and that trial is also going on in India.
Pranay is for that scientist in India, short form.
Okay.
Pranav Sharma or some this thing, that is the thing, Pranay. That is the reason it is Indicus Pranay. India and some Pranay Sharma or Pranay this thing like that. Okay. Who has invented this vaccine. Yeah. But wonderful, and there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. With this, I hand it over to Dr. Sanjay Lalwani. Yes, Sanjay, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Ramakant, just a minute. What? Congratulations, Manish, for an excellent talk.
Thank you, sir.
Just for the viewers, because the TECAD has already applied for the approval to be given in DCGI, the Q-Dengue is likely to come to our country also. It's an excellent vaccine. The European country has already approved to be used from 4 years of age. And good part is they have got now 5 years of experience and the efficacy studies, where even at the end of 5 years, the hospitalization, that was their secondary aim, is almost up to the tune of 84%, which is persisting, which is preventing hospitalization. Though the primary disease has, the vaccine efficacy has come down to 61. So it's a very promising one. And giving protection against all 4 serotypes is also very encouraging. Can be used in seropositive as well as seronegative. So yes. I think all of us must be eagerly waiting for this Q-Dengue to come to our country.
Sanjay, I just wanted to add about monoclonal antibodies used in dengue.
Yeah.
So they are also promised. They are also going to be promising in next few years.
Yes.
And the only point is when we are going to use and where at what stage we are going to use these monoclonal antibodies.
That is
because it is very effective in halting the disease.
See, it is just like in COVID. See,
Polyserositis had when you have a polyserositis and a complications of dengue, the dengue process itself can be halted by giving monoclonal antibodies at that stage. So you really do not know which child is going to go for this and where we are supposed to go and where we are supposed to hit the target.
Correct.
Manish, excellent talk, fantastic way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It was very well perceived and accepted talk and wonderful. In very given short time, everything was covered. Excellent talk, definitely. With this, I hand it over to Dr. Lalwani sir, Dr. Sanjay Lalwani, to moderate today's session on rabies vaccine. Our guest panelist is Dr. Ashwath Narayana, who is HOD and Professor of Community Medicine at KIMS, and our two moderators are Dr. Sanjay Marathe from Nagpur and Dr. Rajendra Khadke from Aurangabad. Over to you, Dr. Sanjay Lalwani.
So I think, you are able to hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Loud and clear.
Yeah. So good evening to all. I think we have dedicated this 35-40 minutes for rabies vaccination because every pediatrician will have some questions in his mind with the widespread use of rabies vaccine in day-to-day office practice. And I hope at the end of this discussion, all his doubts are cleared. And I think there will be a clear-cut ideas about various ways, the schedules of giving rabies vaccine. As you all know, rabies is a fatal disease and 22,000 odd deaths are documented in India year on year. Still, a lot of mortality is there. The morbidity is not, but mortality is 100%. So with me on the panelist, of course, is Sanjay from Nagpur, Rajendra from Aurangabad, and we were searching for a person who has done work in rabies. And I think Dr. Ashwath Narayan was the right choice from Bangalore. So I will pose few questions to the panelists and ask one by one to answer. And at the end of the session, I think we would be able to give you clear messages and hopefully clear all your doubts about rabies vaccine. So let's take few cases. Sanjay, for you, a mother brings a 6-year-old girl, Maya, who gives a history of bite by a mouse at home. Bite mark is present. What should be done? Need of rabies vaccine and the need of TT.
I will take all the questions together.
Yeah, you can take it.
Yeah. In this panel discussion, basically based on rabies, so we'll be talking only related to the rabies. Now there is definitely a 6-year-old girl who had got a bite by mouse. Most probably it's a domestic mouse, or you can say not the rodent one. And the history is almost 1 month old.
Yeah.
Now definitely there is a bite. So first, if we have confirmed that there is a bite by the mouse, now the domestic mouse is now, we should know which are the animals which are included for the vaccination. In this, domestic mouse is not included for the rabies vaccination. That is one. But at the same time, I would like to tell to the audience that the rodent or a wild rodent, which is seen usually in the jungles and all that, then this is definitely a case to be given anti-rabies vaccine as well as an RIG at that time. A rabies vaccine is not required in this child, provided this is a domestic rodent. And need for TT depends on her vaccination status. If Maya has already received 5 years booster containing tetanus, then there is no need to give TT. So in this situation, we will not give anti-rabies vaccine to this child, considering that this is a domestic rodent and not a wild one. But wild one is definitely included for the vaccination.
Yeah, so I think a mouse bite, no rabies vaccine, clear-cut message. Now the next question to Dr. Ashwath. What are the
Sanjay, may I ask here one question?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
This is, as Dr. Sanjay Marathi has said, it will be rodent which is wild. But we have got in around our vicinity in urban area, the big mouse is there, which is also called as goose to a rodent. What about that?
No,
Which is
you
a
have
big.
to give. See, there is a one rule in rabies. In case of a doubt, overtreat. Because you cannot ask whether that rodent is from jungle or not. But usually, ज्याला आपण rat म्हणतो आपल्या आजूबाजूला जी छोटासा असतो, त्याच्याकरता it is not included for the anti-rabies vaccine. But anything bigger than that, or if you feel that this is a big one and must have come from the jungles and all that, must be given. Must be given the anti-rabies as well as the RIG, because it's a 100% fatal disease and you do not want to take a chance.
So I think that's clear message from Sanjay. Dr. Ashwath, what are the different modes of rabies transmission? In means which animal bites the audience wants to know can transmit the rabies infection?
Yeah, first I will take up the second question first. Which animal bites can transmit rabies infection? Sir, all, especially the domestic dog and cat, and peridomestic like cow, buffalo, donkey, camel, all that can transmit. And the most important one is the wild animals. Wild animals. So as we discussed in the previous question with Sanjay Marathe, so anti-rabies treatment is not indicated in bite by domestic rabbits and birds. So in all other bites, we need to provide anti-rabies treatment. And regarding the first question, what are the different modes of rabies transmission? It's a bite, scratch, and also the aerosols, especially when the people go into the caves or forest. So inhalation history is there, then we need to provide anti-rabies treatment. The most commonest in our country is the bite, and scratches are quite dangerous with the cat. So very commonly found in the cat. So even the scratch from the paws, also we provide anti-rabies treatment.
So I think that's clear from Ashwath that which bite requires an rabies treatment and rabies transmission.
Sanjay, one more question. Sorry to disturb you again
Sure,
and again.
sure.
Yeah, for Ashwath sir, I wanted to ask whether the inhalational rabies is documented in our country, and there are caves in Meghalaya. So these caves, many times these caves are not this thing. Many people do not visit repeatedly. Those who are exploring it. So do they need rabies prophylaxis while going in these caves, and whether inhalational rabies is documented in our country?
So there is a study from NIMHANS, Bangalore, where Dr. Mani and team, they have tried to isolate the virus from the bats in the Nagaland, in the caves in Nagaland, because there they consume, in most of the tribal places in the northeast, they also consume the bat. So they try to isolate, and it was found in very, very few cases. So, but as such, there's no clear-cut documented case of rabies in our country from bats. But since the studies are not, many studies are not there, it is safer to provide anti-rabies treatment, even the exposure to bats, especially your question pertaining to the aerosols. So it is better wherever the caves are infested with the bats, and because many people goes into caves and many of the caves, but we don't provide as such unless there is a clear-cut history of bat bite. So it is not required generally.
Sir, it was said that basically Indian bat do not carry even by bite, do not indicate an anti-rabies vaccine.
Yes,
Is it true?
Documented cases are not there.
So I think
Sanjay,
Bolo.
it's a very clear-cut division which has been done. The bats which are seen in the Western world, especially America and all that, which is called as silver-winged bats. They are the bats which are carrying the rabies virus. Whereas in Indian bats, they have not seen. So there is a big confusion with the audience. So I would like to make it very clear. Even in this purple book, there is one confusing statement which I would like to clear. In a discussion, we have made that in case of exposure to the bat, you have to consider this as category 3 and treat it. This is true internationally when we are talking about the disease. But at the same time, we have mentioned in the subsequent pages that bat is not included in our country for giving an anti-rabies vaccine. So
Fair.
it should be clear, because every time they go through the purple book and they will say this contradictory statement has come. So that first part is basically to be taken in general view, whereas in India, the bat at present is not included. At the same time, there is some confusion with the squirrel, because there is some ground saying that squirrel has the rabies viruses, but at present till today, we have not included squirrel in the list of animals where the anti-rabies vaccine is required. Just for the audience to know.
Okay, so I think which bites transmit rabies, I think it's aptly clear to the audience at large. Dr. Rajendra, you have a case here. A 3-year-old boy was playing with a puppy in the neighborhood. Mother notices some scratches on the legs when he returns home. What is the role of local wound care in any of these bites? Would you like to specify, and how effective it is to decrease the viral load?
See, basically, when we are always talking about vaccine, we always focus about the prevention by only vaccine. Now, if we talk about the local wound care in any bite, it is utmost important, because it can reduce 50% of the virus transmission from the local wound to the system. So basically, you have to have clean soap water cleaning of that wound. That is one. Application of some or the other poison-like ointment or solution, antiseptic solution for the child on the wound. That is very important, and it would reduce the chance of getting rabies by 50%. That is a huge percent.
So I think the audience must remember that local wound care is of paramount importance before actually you come on the treatment for prevention of rabies. Next question to you, Rajendra. A lot of time we have the dog bite which takes place, and the neighbor's dog comes and bite the child in the house when he's playing. And then they get the child and they get the dog's rabies vaccination card, and the neighbor justifying it that my dog is totally protected against rabies. How important is to rely on the vaccination card of the dogs, and how efficacious are the dog rabies vaccination? Are they same like human, or are they different?
See, here there are two ways to think about it. Basically, as all of us know that we pediatricians know very well about the cold chain. How much cold chain is being known to the veterinarian, we really do not know. And at the same time, it has been found that the dog vaccination, the protection from the rabies is only 50%, not more than 50%. So basically, whether the dog is vaccinated or whether the dog is not vaccinated is not a question when you have some class 2 or class 3 bite in your child. Dog vaccination is for dogs, and human vaccination is for human. So that has to be remembered. Whether it is a vaccinated dog or whether it is not vaccinated dog, doesn't matter when you are treating the child.
Sanjay, how do you manage a child if blood oozing is absent or present? Can you just tell to the audience how to categorize the rabies dog, any of the bites, and how does your treatment modalities differ?
Yeah. For the management point of view, it has categorized into 3, 1, 2, and 3. Category 1 is where handling of the suspected rabbit dog, playing with the dog, feeding the dog, or sometimes licking the intact skin is category 1. Then I will go on the treatment subsequently. First, I will complete the categories. Category 2 is when there is no blood. Usually it is called either nibbling or abrasions, when there is no blood. And very easy to remember, whenever there is even a drop of blood, consider this as category 3. As I told you last time, 90% of the patients who have come to you are in category 3. Otherwise, they will never come to you. So category 3.
See, basically, the difference between category 2 and category 3 is obvious. When you see a blood, you have a grade 3 category.
So just keep in one mind, a drop of blood is category 3.
But the treatment differs in category 1 and category 2. So is there any method to know whether the category 1 or category 2 is
Somebody has
separated.
given that spirit test and all that. You apply a spirit, and if you can see an enhancement and redness and pain at the site, then you consider this as category 2. Now, as far as the treatment is concerned, as we have seen, there are three most important pillars. One is wound care or wound toileting. Second is anti-rabies vaccine. And third is anti-rabies vaccine plus immunoglobulins / monoclonal antibodies. In category 1, only wound toileting is required, and we encourage this patient to take pre-exposure prophylaxis as a protection. In category 2, and in an immunocompetent person, you give anti-rabies vaccine and no rabies immunoglobulins or monoclonal antibodies, and TT and everything what Dr. Khadke sir has already said, that will continue. Wound toileting is extremely important. You come to category 3, in category 2, if he's an immunocompromised person, this should be considered as category 3. In category 3, in an immunocompetent or an immunocompromised, you have to give anti-rabies vaccine, complete doses, and rabies immunoglobulins / monoclonal antibodies, whatever is available, both is required. And if the patient has received pre-exposure prophylaxis or post-exposure prophylaxis in the past, the treatment will vary in this. RIG or monoclonal antibodies are not required.
Yeah, I think we will take it, but I think the clear message to the audience is category 1 only local wound care, category 2 wound care plus a vaccine, and category 3 a wound care, immunoglobulin or an antibody plus a vaccine. A plus B, A plus B plus C. That's the basic for category 1, category 2, and category 3. Dr. Aswad.
Sir, Sanjay, one more question, sorry.
Sure.
Now many people are saying that category 4. Will it make difference in management, and why we are saying category 4?
Please, I am not aware. What is this category 4? Then I can answer, because I have no idea.
Yeah. So some in the severe exposures, they say even category 8, 9, 10 like that. But WHO has not accepted the request to categorize up to 10. So we still have only category 3 only. So there's no category 4.
Yeah. So Aswad, I think it comes to you. The various ways to prevent rabies. The only way to treat rabies is to prevent. So local care, 50% viral load complete. And then we have two modalities, the active and passive immunization. Can you just highlight to the audience what is active immunization and what is passive immunization for rabies? And what are the different options available for passive immunization?
Yes, sir. So we have discussed about the importance of the local wound treatment, because that itself reduces the rabies risk by 50%. So which many doctors or hospitals, they don't have this facility. They don't do it. But the second second thing is active immunization, especially it plays important role in mainly in category 2, where we have India is a hub for vaccine manufacturing. We have basically 3 types of vaccine in our country. One, we have PCECV, Purified Chick Embryo Cell Vaccine, which is presently one vaccine produced by Zydus. And we have a Purified Virocell Rabies Vaccine produced by Chiron, and second one by Serum Institute of India. And third one is by HBI, Human Biological Institute. And there are other vaccines, 1 or 2 vaccines being imported from China. So, and we have a third variety of vaccine which is being available, made available in the last 1 year. It's a subunit G protein vaccine produced by Cadila Pharmaceuticals, which is a 3-dose vaccine based on virus-like particles, where they is a subunit vaccine, but recommended only for adults. As of now, adults and intramuscular only. Whereas the other vaccines, the PCEC, Vaxirabian and PVR, we have Cairorab, Rabivax and Avarab, has all been approved by drug controller for both IM and ID administration. So here we need to know about the schedule also.
I will take it ahead schedule. You just give an overall view about vaccines.
Yeah. We have basically three types, so that I already elaborated. Then we have in the passive immunization, we have two different types. One, the rabies immunoglobulins, where it is of two types, equine rabies immunoglobulin and human rabies immunoglobulin. And we have a second variety is a rabies monoclonal antibody, which is being available from last 5 years. So especially the single map Rabishield, which was launched in this country from 2017. 2017 is a single map, and we have a cocktail map from Zydus, which has been made available from last 2 years. So these are the options available as well as for active and passive immunization in our country.
Yeah, so I think Ashwath has made it very clear, 3 vaccines available, except the one with Cadila, both can be used by the IM or the ID route. And when you look to a passive, because of the monoclonal antibody, it's a revolution in passive immunization in the country. 2 Indian manufacturers with monoclonal antibodies. And of course, the human immunoglobulin and the equine, which still is used, is large in government setup, which Ashwath will take ahead. Sanjay, available rabies immunoglobulin you say, and Ashwath, since you use immunoglobulin quite a lot in the government setup, after Sanjay adds to it, I would like your expert comments on that.
Yes.
Sanjay, the rabies immunoglobulins are available currently at 2 types. One is equine rabies immunoglobulin, where the source is the horse. The second is human rabies immunoglobulins, where the source is the human being. These 2 are currently available, but the problem with this immunoglobulins is the availability is very less. It's very costly. The human rabies immunoglobulin is very costly as compared to equine rabies immunoglobulin. Most of the government setups, the equine rabies immunoglobulin is available, and the purified equine rabies immunoglobulin is said to be much better, and the efficacy is almost same as human rabies immunoglobulins. It has got its own disadvantages. The disadvantages is basically that the source is either the equine or human, so limited, very costly, the risk of anaphylaxis, non-availability. Then many times you feel very risky to give these immunoglobulins in your OPD, and the chances of blood-borne infections to be transmitted because the source is human or the equine is also high. So at present it is available, but if you see the WHO guideline book, it says not more than 10%. Actually, it is only 2% of the patients of category 3 who needs RIG, only 2% has received either human RIG or equine RIG. So these are the basic limiting factors with the RIG or the human or equine RIG available at present.
Okay. So dose, Sanjay, would you specify the dose audience?
The equine rabies immunoglobulin, the dose is 40 milligram per kilogram per dose to be given only once. And the maximum dose which is given is 3000 international units. Whereas in human rabies immunoglobulin, the dose is 20 international units per kg per dose to be given once locally. And the maximum dose which is usually allotted is 1500 international units.
Yeah, another thing is that most of us in our private practice today have really shifted 100% from immunoglobulin to monoclonal antibodies. And I still remember in last 5 years, I've hardly used any immunoglobulin per se. What is the situation, Ashwath, in government setup today? Are they using immunoglobulin or are they using the monoclonal antibodies? And why if so, why the shift is not taking place when it is ease of production, the cost is less, easily available, each and every category 3 wounds get it. What is that which prevents it to be used in the government setup as on today?
Yes, sir. So in the government setup, in most of the government hospitals and municipal corporation hospitals, they are using equine rabies immunoglobulin because it's quite cost effective, cheaper. But of late, in some of the government hospitals and municipal corporation hospitals, human rabies immunoglobulins has been procured, and basically they have kept reserved for the severe exposures and also for the children. So this is about immunoglobulin. Regarding the monoclonal antibodies, there is some municipal corporations, they are procuring the monoclonal antibodies, but for a state government to procure, they are waiting for the national guidelines. It has to be incorporated in national guidelines. So the discussion is going on at the NCDC level. We had recently the National Technical Advisory Group meeting with NCDC, and they're going to shortly come out with the guidelines. So till such time, rabies monoclonal antibody purchased by the state government per se in a large quantities is kept pending. But it is available in small quantities in many of the municipal corporations.
Yeah. So one thing I'll take Rajendra your this thing. One thing I think has revolutionized the treatment of rabies as far as passive immunization is available of monoclonal antibodies. It has been a game changer from availability, ease of access of administration, and of course the cost reduction and affordability to the masses at large. Rajendra, you want to add something?
I just wanted to say that basically equine immunoglobulin as well as human immunoglobulin has a higher cap of 1,500 units and 3,000 units. There must be some reason for this, because when we give simultaneous immunoglobulin as well as vaccine, the vaccine is supposed to start working after 7 days. So we don't want large antibody volume to be there, which will be neutralized by the vaccine itself, or vaccine will be neutralized by the immunoglobulins. So there is a capping. So even if you have 100 kg child, then also you are supposed to follow only the upper cap of the immunoglobulin which is being used.
Now, Sanjay, I think the audience at large would like to know your experience of use of monoclonal antibodies by the two manufacturers, and I would like you to go on details of composition, the dosing schedule, and which one you would prefer of the two.
Yeah. Now it has what you said, Sanjay. The monoclonal antibodies have certainly revolutionized the treatment, because if you go about say 5 years back, it was so difficult to get human rabies immunoglobulins or equine. Either you have to send a patient to government medical colleges the next day and then wish that such things will be available in medical college and the child will get the equine rabies immunoglobulin. But with the availability of these two monoclonal, first I will say there are two types of monoclonal antibodies available for use for private practitioners. One is Rabieshield by Serum Institute of India. Second is TwinRab by Zydus. What is the difference between these two? The Rabieshield is human monoclonal antibody. It's a single monoclonal antibody where there is an excellent trial on which it has got recommendation in WHO also. It has neutralized almost 26 international subtypes of rabies virus and rabies-like viruses. It is IgG type 1 immunoglobulin, so which is required, and it has an affinity towards 2 isotopes of G proteins on the rabies virus, which is required. In last post-marketing surveillance of almost more than 50,000 doses, not a single failure has come to the notice and widely used. The dose of Rabieshield is 3.3 international units per kg per dose and can be given very safely without much fear of anaphylaxis, because it has nothing to do with the human products or anything. The cost effective, very cheap as compared to the human rabies immunoglobulin. The second is TwinRab by Zydus Cadila. The Zydus Cadila basically got support from the WHO way back in 1990, when WHO has thought of coming out with the cocktail of monoclonal antibodies, so that you will not avoid any mutant escape. So they will say if it is better than one to have monoclonal antibodies having a different affinity for the different isotopes on the glycoprotein, G protein, so that the coverage will be better. So the coverage should be better, so that none of the subtypes of rabies should be escaped because of this use of this TwinRab. But unfortunately, what has happened? They have used the equine one and continue to so. Now, if you see in last 10 years, everybody is going for the human monoclonal antibodies, but they have done the excellent studies. They have shown non-inferiority to human rabies immunoglobulins. They have seen that it is at least as good as the human rabies immunoglobulins. So to my personal opinion, as there is no head-to-head comparison, I will say Ravishield as well as Tinrab are equally good, should be used. I have personally used in many cases, both of them. Everybody has responded, not a single failure. Another thing, in Tinrab composition, I said there are two types. There is no point in going into the names of these, Docaravimab and Moramirivab and all that. The dose is 40 milligram per kilogram per dose to be infiltrated locally. Available, Ravishield is available as 2.5 ml 100 international units. There is one more preparation where there is 2.5 ml for 250 also. And they are likely to come with the smaller one with the 50 international units also. But freely available is 100 international units in 2.5 ml. As far as the Tinrab is concerned, it is available in 4 strengths. One is 1 ml is 600 international units, 2.5 ml is 1500 international units, 5 ml is 3000 international units, and they have one more 10 ml also having 3000 international units.
Sanjay,
Further details?
is there any ceiling on the dose? Suppose you come across with a child who is 12 years old and 60 kg weight. What is the cutoff of
There
giving
is no,
the Ravishield?
fortunately in this there is no cutoff. You have to calculate the dose according to the per kg. And another thing which I would like to insist, and for the viewers, that now it has been unanimously accepted that whether you are using human these monoclonal antibodies or human rabies immunoglobulin, the maximum dose possible should be infiltrated in and around the wound. And there is no role of intramuscular monoclonal antibodies or human rabies immunoglobulins or equine rabies immunoglobulins in almost all cases, except there are only 3 exceptions. One is if there is an aerosol exposure to the rabies virus in the pharma companies or in the research laboratories, you have to give intramuscular because you have no idea. Secondly, another indication is if there is a doubtful bite or exposure in the Western world, they give intramuscular. Or third, if somebody has gone to a cave which is full of bats, that is another indication where you cannot find it out where is the exposure, you have to give intramuscular. Otherwise, the role of that 50-50% is totally out, and you should not give the remaining 50% intramuscularly. Try to give maximum in and around the wound.
Yeah, I think Sanjay has specified. Ashwath, I think you have done trials for both of them. You have done for Ravishield and you have done for Tinrab. What's your personal take on the choice between the two, or use anyone which is available?
Yeah, I'll just go one step ahead. Sir, in our antibiotics clinic, we use all 4 types. ERIG for the poor who cannot afford monoclonal antibodies, and HRIG reserved for those who can afford. Those who can for VIPs and all, we provide supposed to be gold standard HRIG, and monoclonal those who can afford, because the middle income group and all, they can afford monoclonal antibodies. So we use both Ravishield as well as Tinrab. One just clarification here is Ravishield is available in 1.25 ml, especially for pediatric subjects, and also for 2.5 ml. So 2 formulations available here, and this Tinrab presently available only 2 formulations. 1 ml having a 600 IU and 2.5 ml 1500 IU. So they kept on hold the larger quantity, 5 ml and 10 ml, they kept on hold. But what we have found is these two, both Ravishield and Tinrab, are equally safe and efficacious. They are comparable. They are almost comparable, except it is a human mAb, whereas Tinrab is a cocktail mAb from the murine source. So it is hard. Is mainly the affordability is a question. Availability, there's no question at all. In the major towns cities, all the 4 products are available. Only affordability is a question. And another important one is this HRIG is coming out with pre-filled syringe and highly viscous, very difficult to inject into the fingers, tip of the fingers and the tip of the nose, like that. It is very quite painful. So usually you avoid giving HRIG, but otherwise all four are equally safe and efficacious.
Yeah, I think the carry-home message for a pediatrician in private practice is monoclonal antibodies are available freely. Use them. They have made a revolution in the treatment of rabies. And what Sanjay specified is that there is no role of intramuscular route for giving monoclonal antibodies. 100% it has to be inoculated at the site. If the wound is small, you give it full. If the wound is large, then you dilute it with normal saline and see that you infiltrate the total wound. So I think use monoclonal antibodies 50 IU and 100 IU, which are the two things. So I think
Sanjay, one question. If we have got available both monoclonal antibodies and human rabies immunoglobulin, which will you prefer?
Monoclonal antibodies.
I will prefer monoclonal antibodies for the reasons that the cost effective. They have already shown non-inferiority to human rabies immunoglobulin, so they are as efficacious as human rabies. There is almost no chance of anaphylaxis. The fourth one is the chances, whatever the small chances of transmission of the blood-borne infection because of the human rabies immunoglobulins is not there with the monoclonal antibodies. And safety in giving in my OPD. So what is happening in HRIG, I used to send it to my hospital, observe the child for half an hour, 1 hour in PICU, then send it. For monoclonal antibodies, I can give it in my OPD, so very safe procedure. So I don't find any reason not to use monoclonal antibodies.
I think
one theoretical point is there. Probably it is not very relevant in our country, but the mutant genes, mutant rabies viruses are not covered by monoclonal antibodies. They are very specific. So mutant strains will be covered by HRIG, but fortunately in our country it is not yet documented. So in our country it becomes same whether we are using monoclonal antibodies or HRIG.
Twin wrap, which is said to use.
Still, it is not covering all the mutant this thing.
It is supposed to cover
the carry-home message for the pediatrician is use monoclonal antibodies. It's ease of administration, less dose, easy for inoculate, freely available, never any shortage, and proved efficacy. Rajendra, a next question for you. A next mother notices old scratch mark on the right leg of his son, a 13 years old boy. When on asking, he gives a history of stray dog chasing him while returning from his cricket ground almost 1 month back. So in a history, if they ask, should the post-exposure prophylaxis be given now? The bite is 1 month back. And he says that he was wearing a full length pant. So should we get a rabies vaccine and should we require a post-exposure prophylaxis?
See, the most important thing is basically scratch mark after 1 month itself is a class 3 bite in the child. So if it is a class 3 bite, irrespective of whatever the period which the child had, we should give immunoglobulin as well as vaccination in this child.
So the next question is only
Dr. Rajendra, one question to Dr. Rajendra. Should we not say this is traceable or non-traceable dog?
Yeah.
If it's a neighbor's dog and now it is 1 month old, he is already alive. So there is no point in giving anything.
So I did specify it's a stray dog.
Say when
it's not written here.
Stray dog, not out of observation.
Yeah, stray dog.
Not out of observation.
Yeah.
Purposefully said stray dog.
Yeah.
So if it is stray dog,
then we should cover.
I don't think that we are there.
So
we should.
Rajendra,
if there is a scar, we should give.
Only you'll give vaccine or you'll give passive immunization with active immunization?
Passive plus active till 3 years after bite.
Okay. Now, I think this Dr. Ashwath did clarify on the available rabies vaccine. They all are quite potent. They're quite efficacious. Ashwath, what is the duration of immunity given by these rabies vaccines? What is the data available?
Sir, after the primary vaccination of because if it is given as a pre-exposure, the demonstrable antibodies will be there up to 1 year. 1 year. In some cases, two years. But in a post-exposure where they have given 5 doses, definitely the antibodies will be there more than 2 years, 2 to 5 years, they say. So only in the case of a re-exposure, we need to be provided only 2 doses of vaccine.
Okay. Now, Sanjay, what are the we have covered the immunoglobulin, the passive, the immunoglobulin and monoclonal antibodies, and that's for category 3. I think it's very clear to the audience. Now, when we also have a vaccine.
So Sanjay, 2 doses on day 0 and day 3.
Yeah, I will take on the vaccines now. I will come on the dose of vaccine.
Yeah.
Now, Sanjay, a specific question. We have different schedule for post-exposure prophylaxis. ISIN protocol, shortened ISIN protocol, and intradermal. And I think, Ashwath, you will take more on various schedules, especially in the government setup, because in private practice, we hardly use the intradermal route. So, Sanjay, on ISIN protocol, shortened ISIN protocol, and what's the difference between WHO protocol, DCGI recommendation, and the IAP recommendation?
I will make it very clear that NCDC has a slightly different protocol, and they are yet to come out with some modifications in future. In WHO, CDC, and ACVIP recommendation is the same. Initially, if you will see in SN protocol, as an anti-rabies vaccine, 5 doses were given on day 0, day 3, day 7, day 14, and day 20. This is being followed even by the NCDC, 5-dose protocol. Whereas WHO, ACVIP, and CDC, they are recommending 4-dose protocol. You have to give 1 dose of intramuscular, 0.5 ml or 1 ml according to the vaccine available. Intramuscularly on day 0, day 3, day 7, and 4th dose is given between 14th and 20th days. And they have said it is as good as a 5-dose regime. There is slight change in this protocol. If somebody has come little late, then you can modify it. You can give 2 doses on day 0, then day 7 and day 21. So again, 4 doses can be adjusted like this. This is basically for the intramuscular. There is no further shortening in this regime. There is no study. There are studies on 3 doses, but not yet recommended. So we will not discuss. So basically either give intramuscular 5 doses by NCDC, initial recommendation by WHO also. Now 4 doses, as I have already discussed. Then as far as the, this is for post-exposure prophylaxis in an immunocompetent person. If the immunocompromise is there, then still today we go for the full 5 doses. Secondly, if in case somebody has received post-exposure prophylaxis or pre-exposure prophylaxis before, then in re-exposure, the schedule is you have to give 2 doses. This intramuscular dose on day 0 and day 3. These 2 doses are required. In such situation, no rabies immunoglobulins or monoclonal antibodies should be given. Otherwise, it will mask the heightened immune response because you are giving this as a booster.
So I think Sanjay has made it very clear that if you want to give an intramuscular rabies vaccine, the NCDC and the DCGI still has 5 doses schedule, whereas the ACVIP, the WHO has shortened it by 1 dose into a 4-dose schedule. And we, if there is a pre-exposure or a post-exposure prophylaxis previously, and again it comes with dog bite, only 2 doses are sufficient. That should cover up this thing. Ashwath,
after 3 months.
Our experience.
Sir. After 3 months.
After 3 months. Yeah, fair. Ashwath, the audience wants to know, can we pediatrician give intradermal dose in our private practice? Is it as efficacious as the intramuscular dose? And what is the advantages of it?
Yeah. So since it is given in a fractionated small volume, you need to have at least 4 to 5 cases per day, at least within 6 hours. Because once reconstituted, rabies vaccine is reconstituted, it has to be used within 6 hours. So if you have 4 to 5 cases a day, so you can give intradermal, which will be cost effective. So in a pediatric practice. Otherwise, it is only intramuscular. And in the government setup, even the taluk hospital and district hospitals, the government has given permission to provide intradermal rabies vaccination, which is quite cost effective. So that's the main important. Otherwise, both ID and IM are equally efficacious. They're absolutely safe and efficacious.
So I think the route is same. It's only the breaking of the vial or the ampule and the available subject to inoculate decides. And I think we pediatricians as such are usually routinely giving intramuscular vaccination.
Sanjay, one question to Dr. Ashwath.
Yes, sir.
Sir, now there are two statements, one by the WHO, which says intradermal vaccine can be safely given even to an immunocompromised person. The NCDC says in an immunocompromised person, intradermal vaccine should not be given, only intramuscular. So what is your opinion?
Sir, for pre-exposure, there is no doubt. So you can give IM or ID for pre-exposure. But post-exposure, because rabies is a fatal disease, we do not know the immune state of the individual. If you are definitely sure that they are immunocompetent, they have a good immunity, even those who are taking chemotherapy or long-term steroids. So if you are confident, please give ID also, because WHO says if it is very well controlled.
Immunocompromised, because the background paper
then,
of WHO.
Then no, sir, we cannot take chance. So very clear guidelines are there. You have to get it tested. Antibodies need to be tested. So if it falls less than 0.5 after complete course, you need to decide based upon that the booster dose. So otherwise, we prefer to be given only IM.
Therefore, I am saying the NCDC says do not give. The WHO says you must give. Yeah. Because that time we are giving rabies immunoglobulins also to that immunocompromised.
Yeah. Yes.
So what we should follow? NCDC or WHO?
No, it's very clear, sir. Either WHO or NCDC, it is very guidelines are very clear. In immunocompromised subjects, NCDC says only IM. WHO puts up in a different way that if you are sure that either in HIV case or those on chemotherapy, if you are sure of a good immune response, give ID. But they very categorically don't say that don't give it. But in our country, since the facilities are not there to check for their immune status, we better give them IM. We avoid ID.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. Next question for Rajendra. You have a 3-year-old boy who has been given pre-exposure prophylaxis 6 months before, but gets a scratch with a blood ooze today. What should so in the vaccination? One part is clear: post-exposure 5 dose, 4 dose, pre-exposure 3 dose, 2 dose. So it's 1 dose reduction on post-exposure and pre-exposure. Now we come with special situation. And if there's a boy who has taken a pre-exposure prophylaxis 6 months back, and now he has come with a scratch with blood wounds today, he's a category 3 wound. Will you give him immunoglobulin? Will you give him vaccine? If so, in what dose?
Sir, now this child is basically having class 3 white. There is no question about it. And the child has already received pre-exposure prophylaxis. So there is no role of immunoglobulins or monoclonal antibodies in this child. But definitely there is a role of vaccination after 3 months of pre-exposure prophylaxis in 0 and 3. These are the only 2 doses which the child is supposed to get.
So I think it's very clear, if any child has taken a pre-exposure rabies vaccine or a post-exposure rabies vaccine, if he gets a bite within 3 months, nothing. If it is after 3 months, no immunoglobulin or no monoclonal antibodies, and he needs to take 2 vaccines. Sanjay,
can I add one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because this is just to clear the confusion with the audience also. That 3 months honeymoon period which is given with the post-exposure prophylaxis, there are 2 confusing statements which has come. It should be very clear with the audience. The WHO says with the post-exposure prophylaxis, the last dose, in next 3 months, if you get any kind of an bite by any animal, suspected rabies, you are not supposed to give anti-rabies vaccine or rabies immunoglobulin.
Okay.
Whereas if you see the NCDC guideline, it says whether it is post-exposure prophylaxis or pre-exposure prophylaxis, for 3 months you are not supposed to give. The difference between these two, the WHO is recommending 2-dose pre-exposure prophylaxis, whereas NCDC is clearly mentioning 3-dose pre-exposure prophylaxis, 0, 7 and 21 or 28. So there is some confusing statement in the purple book also on the rabies. So just to clear it, if you are following the NCDC guidelines of 3-dose schedule, then in next 3 months, if you get any dog bite or any animal suspected to be rabid, for 3 months you have given this liberty not to give anti-rabies vaccine or rabies immunoglobulins, anti-rabies vaccine. If you are giving 2-dose schedule as WHO has suggested or ACVIP has suggested, don't use this 3 months period for pre-exposure prophylaxis.
So, sir, you want to say that basically, if I have taken a pre-exposure prophylaxis according to CDC and WHO and ACVIP, then I am supposed to take 3 doses.
2 doses. No. Then you are supposed to take 2 doses on re-exposure even within 3 months.
Within 3 months also.
Yeah, and if you have taken as per the NCDC of 3 doses, 0, 7 and 21, then they say for next 3 months you should not. So that should be very clear with the audience.
Sure. I have a question. There is a pet dog in the home, and my 2 children keeps on playing with them regularly, and they keep on getting the scratch by the nails or the scratch here and there. How frequently I should allow my children to take the rabies vaccine in the house, or should I not keep the pet dog? What should be the protocol?
First is you can keep the pet provided you provide the vaccination, regular vaccination to the pet. So as per the veterinarians, primary vaccine, let me for the benefit of the other doctors, let me tell. So after 1.5 months of the age of the puppy, you need to give first dose, and after that 1 month, so 2 primary dose and annual boosters every year need to be provided to the pet. That's very, very important. Then second, for the pet owners and the children, so as soon as you bring the pet, you should better provide a pre-exposure vaccination. And if you provide by ID route, it is more cost effective. So with 1 vial, you can give, within 3 vials, you can protect the entire family of 10 members. If there are 10 members, you can provide, which will be more cost effective than giving post-exposure prophylaxis, including the immunoglobulin after the bite. So definitely, what is important is all pet owners should get their pet vaccinated regularly, but both with primary vaccination and the booster dose annually, and immunize their family members with intradermal, which is quite cost effective. 0728, 0.1 ml per person per site, one single site only. So with total dose will be 0.3 ml, 0.1 ml on day 0, 0.1 ml on day 7, 0.1 ml on 28. So it is quite cost effective.
Ashwar, my question is, suppose we give the family 3-dose intradermal pre-exposure prophylaxis, but the dog is notorious or the child is notorious. So he gets on getting the scratch by the dog every 6 monthly. How long you are going to give these 2 doses? Is there any cutoff?
Yeah. So it's very clear from the guidelines as well as from the clinical trials that pre-exposure vaccination will provide demonstrable antibodies at least for a year. There will be demonstrable antibodies, whether IM or ID, it will be there. So your question is repeatedly being exposed, how frequently they need to take every now and then. Do they take 0 and 3? No, definitely no. Because we have many people outside, they get bitten by a stray dog, as well as the pet within the family get exposed. So guidelines very clear, and we need to just apply our immunology knowledge, and very clear. So once you are given the 0 and 3 for a re-exposure, or after pre-exposure, they get exposed first time. So only 0 and 3. And how frequently, too many bites. So it doesn't warrant. One is we need to advise or caution our family members and the children not to get repeatedly bitten, because for every bite we can't keep on giving vaccine. So education is very, very, very important, and we should not let our pet go out and get in contact with the stray dogs. So these things need to be told to our family members. So education plays a very important role. It's not giving vaccine regularly. It's not
medical
good.
legally safe, Dr. Ashwath. Are you medical legally safe in this situation not to recommend vaccine?
No, but important one is we need to also educate. We should also educate how.
I said
So it's not good on our part to vaccinate repeatedly, because we have certain patients called as phobia patients who keep coming to us saying that they got a leak, they got a scratch, they touched the dog. So they have taken over 15-20 doses of vaccine. As and when they get a scratch or a bite, small bite, they keep taking vaccine because they are scared. They are scared of rabies. So we need to educate. And once, if they are not able to listen to us, and we need to really assess whether they need any psychiatric counseling. So that we have many times we have referred them to psychiatrist. Many times we have referred.
Sir, the question is quite simple. Basically, if I have a pet dog and which is too young, he has a habit of chewing here and there. So he is not only biting to us, but he is biting everywhere, whatever is possible. So whenever we get such type of a pet which is very small enough and he is not exposed to the outside stray dogs, how many times we are really supposed to get the 0 and 3, 0 and 3, 0 and 3? That is what is the question.
No. So once is good enough, 0 and 3. That will definitely, because primary dose will stimulate our body to produce memory cells. The body immune system is sensitized. Once, if you are given the 0 and 3, it's good enough to sustain antibodies for many years, at least for 2 to 5 years. So there's repeatedly you should not be advising vaccination.
Okay.
Now, suppose this dog itself is a very, very close friend of my stray dogs, whom I have already immunized, and I know that the immunization of dog gives only 50% protection to my stray dogs. But my dog is playing every day with these stray dogs. So now what would be the approach?
Sir, this is the same point, because in the absence of testing facilities, both in the dog where we have immunized to check the antibody facilities not there, or in the immunized individuals where testing facility to check their circulating antibodies are not there, it is quite risky, because even this dog which has been immunized may catch rabies, because whatever the vaccine that we have given to the dog may not have a good quality, good potency, and also immune state of the dog we don't know, because they have a parasitic infections and other illnesses which will reduce their immune status. So because of the poor health of the dog, we really do not know whether the vaccine has worked in that animal. So they can always catch rabies.
So is there any way where I can take a booster every 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year?
Annual booster is recommended only for those who are at a continual risk, especially professionals. Not for everybody.
Yeah.
So important is education.
I think the discussion will go on. I think let's 11 o'clock. So I think 7-8 carry home messages. Which bites requires rabies? Category of bites. Category 1, local care. Its prime importance. Viral load decreases by 50%. Category 2, vaccines. We have talked about the vaccines. We have looked at the intramuscular and intradermal dose and where it has to be given. The post-exposure 5 versus 4, pre-exposures 3 versus 2. And next thing, we have looked at passive immunization by the monoclonal antibodies, which have been a game changer, and dose, and the immunoglobulin, which is given in the government sector. If you have a domestic dog at home or a cat at home, please take the pre-exposure. Anybody who has taken pre-exposure or post-exposure prophylaxis and he gets a bite within 3 months, nothing to do. If he gets after 3 months, you don't require a passive immunization. You just require 2 doses, 0 dose, and the 3 dose, 2 only doses are required. And if you have a pet at home, education is the prime importance. You just can't give away vaccination for each and every bite. The only way to prevent rabies is to sensitize, to vaccinate, to do vaccine, and to take local wound. I hope we at the audience have got clarification all on rabies, and I hope you start use monoclonal antibodies for category 3 wounds. And I think availability of monoclonal antibodies has been one of the game changers in the management of rabies. I think that's all from our side.
Thank
If
you.
there
One
are
point.
Yeah, sure, Ajay. Sure, Sanjay.
Which point I think which we have not covered, that you should never give rabies, that is anti-rabies vaccine in the gluteal region.
Absolutely.
If it is given, it is considered as invalid.
Because of the
Point-
fat there accumulation, it is not absorbed. So no, don't give rabies vaccine in the gluteal region. I think that's fair.
Second point, many times with there is a bite over the head, neck and face area, sometimes the conjunctiva is also exposed. So what we can do, we can take either rabies immunoglobulins or monoclonal antibodies diluted and instill in the conjunctiva as we are instilling any other drops.
Fair.
If there is involvement of the mucous membrane, then you dilute these rabies immunoglobulins and you can do the rinsing. First, you can clean the mucous membrane with the water, as we have already discussed as a first thing to reduce the viral load. Secondly, you can rinse with the diluted monoclonal antibodies or rabies immunoglobulins to have at least a local effect of killing the viruses which have entered, because this is a category 3.
I think that's another question, which just few of the questions. Dr. Ashwath, I have a family where they have drank a milk of a cow, all 10 members, and the cow has died because of rabies. Does the milk transmit rabies, and do I have to vaccinate the family members if the cow has died because of rabies?
Yeah, it's a regular question for us also in the same is. The answer is no, because we have a practice of boiling the milk and drinking. So answer is no, simply no. But situation practically situation is something different in the field, because it becomes a law and order situation. People go and pressurize the government to provide a vaccination because they're really scared. This kind of incidents are happening regularly. In spite of the recommendation, clear recommendation, no, government hospitals, they are forced to provide post-exposure prophylaxis.
I think that's it from our side, and I hope.
Sanjay, there is one case which is today's newspaper.
Yeah.
In Uttar Pradesh, 3.5 years old girl
bitten.
Yeah, has bitten 40 people in that village. And she has been proven to have rabies. What is to be done?
Yeah, they need to be provided, but we got the information from NCDC. They are investigating. So this is there in our group. So NCDC, I got a message just now that they are investigating. But scale, the recommendations are something different. But in the reality, the field situation in the hospital is something different, because rabies is 100% fatal. So it is, we have to take a decision on the spot based upon situation. And if the patient is anxious, we are in doubt, provide the post-exposure prophylaxis. So that's why general thumb rule in rabies is better to over-treat than under-treat.
At the same time, at the same time, you say that human-to-human transmission is not possible.
See,
that's why, sir, all these recommendations, theory, okay, we can discuss here. But in practical reality, in the clinic, in the setup, where we have to take a decision, it's sort of something different. Something different. We have to take a decision on that.
This is a practical problem which has arisen in the community, na? So yeah, we'll have to give them a clear solution. Yes. We can't just say that basically when you are saying on one line that human-to-human transmission is not possible unless there is an organ transplant, then whether this bite is going to transmit rabies. Now some pediatrician must be residing there in that community, na? So those people
sir, we definitely advise them not required. But if there is a force on us to provide a PEP, patient is so anxious, there will be landed problems that we have found in many of the PHCs, in the government hospitals, where the mob will come to asking for a PEP. Then we have to give it. The PHC medical officer will give it.
Dr. Ashwath, I have a question for this. See, on one side we say there is no cases of human to human transmission except the transplant.
Yeah.
At the second time, you say there are viruses isolated from the saliva. In case of an exposure, whether a doctor or to like this case where the 40 people were bitten by that girl, which is very extremely rare in a person who has got rabies, then you say give precautionary anti-rabies vaccine. My question is, what is precautionary? If it's a bite where you think that the viruses are there in the saliva, it becomes a category 3. If you want to protect actually these kids, then you should give anti-rabies vaccine as well as the immunoglobulin. So
Yes, sir.
that is going to be precautionary. You cannot say precautionary by giving anti-rabies vaccine. And suppose somebody dies in this, they say, why you have not given anti-rabies immunoglobulin? Medically they are safe.
Yeah. So that's the same thing. See, theoretical possibility is there. Theoretical possibility, because all the secretions from a rabid animal or rabid patient, secretions, they have a virus. They are infective. Theoretical possibility is there. But practically, when you look at the literature, no one has got the rabies from man-to-man transmission. Is not there. That's what it has been documented. But in reality, when the large number of people get exposed like this in UP, right? Or they have consumed the milk from a rabid animal. Even though we advise, say our duty is we go by recommendations. We advise, but there is a lot of law problem, and the doctor is forced to provide, and he will provide. So in that context, we said it's better to, when in doubt, when the patients are so anxious, right? Provide a PEP. It's not going to harm anybody.
Ashwath is giving a practical tip to all of them. I think that's because this debate will continue. I think first time we have had such a 1 hour lengthy session on each and every minute level of rabies. I hope the audience at large have very, very clear about rabies overall treatment protocols and the vaccination and the passive immunization. And I think, Ramakant, we should take it a call. It's already 11:15 now. And it has been a lengthy session for all of us and for the audience at large.
Yes. Some closing remarks from Ramakant Patil sir, and then note of thanks will do.
As usual, it was a wonderful session. And Sanjay, very nice, practical, and to the point particular questions, and equally the answers were there. Thank you, Ashwath sir, for your clear answers, and all the panelists. And it was a wonderful lecture by Dr. Manish Kulkarni also. I hand it over to Amol for further proceedings and Thanksgiving.
So what a marathon session it was. I thank all of you, all the experts from Team MahaAP, and each delegate and each PG students who attended today. First talk by Dr. Manish ma'am was icing on cake. MahaAP heard her first time on virtual platform. She batted like an impact player in 5th episode of this Immunisation Dialogue in front of all the seasoned players of the team, consisting of Sanjay Marathe sir, Sanjay Lalwani sir, Rajendra Khadke sir. Her talk on newer vaccines and vaccines in pipeline took us to the research going on in the field of vaccinology in discovering the new vaccines to fight against the most dreaded diseases prevalent in community, and their availability will help us, the private as well as all government authorities, in reducing the childhood morbidity and mortality as well. And second, what to say about the so learned support system of MahaAP team, who are carrying this highly awaited monthly session with very practical topics and inputs, which are very useful in day-to-day practice to each one of us. I also thank Dr. D.H. Ashwath Narayana, who is a professor of community medicine at KIMS College in Bangalore. And I want to tell you all that he is also on WHO. He is an WHO expert on advisory panel on rabies from 2223 to 2027. So having him as a guest speaker on MahaIP platform to enlighten us on rabies vaccination was very heartening to each one of us. And the panel discussion was too good. And many of the missing members will again like to watch again and again on MahaIP YouTube. It will be available within 2 to 3 hours on MahaIP YouTube. I also thank President RD Sir, Dr. Neha, Pallavi ma'am, and all PG students and delegates on Zoom and as well as YouTube platform. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwath sir.